everybody, I'm Karen from So Creative, and I'm going to talk to you about machine paper piecing. So the reason that you want to do paper piecing is when you want very pointy points, or like I'm doing with this quilt on the wall, you have lots of little pieces that need to go together in the right way. So the things that I find most helpful for paper piecing are foundation paper, which you're going to put through your printer so that you can print out the patterns and the paper tears away easily after you've stitched on it. An add-a-quarter ruler that has a wonderful lip to it so that you add a 1/4 inch easily. And these flower head pins. These pins lay really nice and flat on your fabric so that when you're cutting, nothing wobbles. So let me show you how it works. So I pre-printed these pages, and what I did first of all was I put the big piece of fabric face down on my cutting mat so that the right side was down, and I put my paper on top. And I did pin it with 2 flower head pins to hold it in place. Now I've continued along for a little bit, but let me show you one of the steps. So I really like using a piece of cardstock to align next to my line that I'm going to stitch on, and I'm going to fold the paper over. And this is where this wonderful ruler comes in. I'm going to leave the cardstock in and just butt the edge of the ruler against the paper and the folded fabric, and I'm going to trim. And now when I go to sew my next piece, you can see I need a piece bigger than this because of seam allowances. I have a strip here that I've cut that I know will definitely cover and will be safe. So I'm going to just sort of eyeball, and I'm going to cut a piece about this big, and I'm going to pin it on this side with my pins. Now you saw me do my cutting, and you know that I had flower pins in already, and you saw that nothing was wobbling. So when I have pinned it, I am going to take it to the sewing machine, and using a smaller stitch length, I am going to sew from this point right along that line to this point. And I'm going to pull the pins as I approach them so that I don't break my needle on the pins. These pins can stay in because they're out of the way of the sewing machine, and I do leave them in until I have these 2 seams sewn so that everything is held in place. Now, once again, I am putting fabrics right sides together when I go to pin, but as you can see, all of the right sides are on the back of the paper. So it's really important that you start by putting the right side of your first fabric against your cutting table before you put your paper on top. Another thing to know is that it's very easy for you to sew a piece of fabric on, and then when you flip it and iron it, you find out that it's too short. So I would rather cut a little bit bigger and give myself a little more room on either end, and know that I'm going to not come up short with my fabric. Once I've done all of my stitching, I'm going to trim all the way around the block. Now, I don't like extra hanging around here, so when I know that I have gotten to the edge, I do trim that part off. And as you can see, I am making sure to give myself a 1/4 inch beyond that final edge, because I'm going to need that 1/4 inch to stitch my blocks to the next blocks. So this one is ready for stitching. Let's look at another one. All right, here I have stitched that extra piece on. So now I'm going to flip it over I'm going to trim away that excess, allowing for that 1/4 inch. I'm going to turn this way, and you can see I have another line here that I need to stitch to. So I'm going to take my tag board again, and I'm going to line it up here. Postcards would work great for this. Anything that's a little bit heavier weight cardstock. So I've folded on that line. I'm leaving the cardstock in. I'm going to put my add 1/4 ruler right next to that fold, and I'm going to trim away the excess. So now I have that perfect 1/4 inch seam, and I'm going to now do black, and I'm going to add it right along here. I'm going to just cut this off. And again, I'm going to use those flower head pins because I know that they'll lay nice and flat should I need to do any cutting along the way. Flower head pins are also really great if you need to hold lots of fabrics together because they're very nice and long and they definitely lay flat. So this one is now ready for stitching. I'm going to stitch from here all the way down here. On the other side, you can see I have nothing to add on. So this is where I'm going to take my ruler and just trim away, and I'll be ready to add the next piece. I did these already. So just to show you, with this pattern, she did a great job giving me little circles. So I know that the circles are going to go together like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line these up and pin them again with my flower head pins, matching the corners as best I can. Let's do that. So I'll stick this in here and then find the corner on this side. And I'll put a bunch of pins all along here, and then I'll sew that one last seam. Now, I do take all the paper off, but not until the whole block is sewn. So you can see here, I have pulled all the paper, but it came off very easily because I used a tighter seam allowance. I dropped my seam allowance down 2 notches so that I am working with a much tighter seam. And you can see there's a little bit of paper left, but it really doesn't matter at all. It's gonna, it's gonna be inside the quilt. It'll wash away the first time we wash the quilt. So that's basically how you do paper piecing. It's really fun. Once you get the hang of it, it is not difficult. Just make sure that you get those flower head pins, you get that add 1/4 ruler, and you use foundation paper. And always make sure that you're using a tighter stitch length and you're being generous with the fabric amounts before you stitch. Thanks for watching. Happy sewing.